When my parents told me, "Your sister's family comes first. You're always last," something inside me crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. I was 32, standing in their kitchen after driving 6 hours to help with their emergency, only to discover they needed me to babysit while my sister Olivia went on vacation. Again. The words hung in the air like poison gas. 20 years of being the backup daughter, the reliable one, the one who got scraps while Olivia got the feast. It all made sense now. Before we dive into how I turned their own words into their worst nightmare, tell me, are you watching from your phone or computer? Have you ever been the family scapegoat while someone else got all the love? Hit that like button if this sounds familiar and subscribe, because this family revenge story gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you'll want to see how karma served justice on a silver platter. My name is Seraphina, and I learned that day that being the good daughter was actually my biggest mistake. See, while I spent decades bending over backward for parents who saw me as free labor, I never questioned why Olivia seemed to live so comfortably despite working part-time at a flower shop. The revelation came 3 weeks later during Thanksgiving dinner. Dad was boasting about how proud he was that Olivia had saved enough to put a down payment on a $400,000 house. My stomach dropped. I knew her income. I knew her husband Marcus barely held steady jobs. The math did not add up. How exactly did she save that much? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Well, we helped a little, Mom said, cutting her turkey with unnecessary aggression. How much is a little? Silence stretched like taffy until Dad cleared his throat. We gave her the inheritance from your grandmother. My fork clattered to my plate. Excuse me. Now, Seraphina, don't get upset. Olivia needed it more. She has children. You're single and stable. The inheritance. The $50,000 that Grandma Rose specifically left to be split between Olivia and me. I remembered the will reading how my parents said they would handle the details, since I was busy with my career as a software engineer. You gave her my half, too. My voice came out strangled. We gave her what she needed, Dad said firmly. Family means taking care of those who need help most. But that was just the beginning of the rabbit hole. Over the next month, I started digging. I requested copies of Grandma's will from the attorney. I discovered that not only had they given Olivia my half of the inheritance, but they had also been systematically funneling her money for years. The family business, a small but profitable auto repair shop that Dad built from scratch, had been lending Olivia money monthly, $1,500 here, $2,000 there. Money that somehow never got paid back. Money that came from the business profits that were supposed to be saved for Dad's retirement. I found receipts tucked away in old shoeboxes when I helped Mom clean the garage. Credit cards paid off. Car payments covered. Even Olivia's wedding, the lavish affair with 200 guests, had been funded entirely by my parents' retirement savings. They told everyone Olivia and Marcus had saved for years. The lies went deeper. My parents had co-signed multiple loans for Olivia. Their house, which I thought was paid off, actually had a second mortgage taken out to cover one of Marcus's failed business ventures. They were drowning in debt while making sure their precious daughter never felt a moment of financial stress. Meanwhile, when I had asked for help with my student loans years earlier, they told me that taking on debt builds character. When I wanted to buy my first house and asked if they could help with even $5,000 for closing costs, they said they were tight on money. The contempt I felt for myself was overwhelming. How had I been so blind? How had I spent 3 decades accepting their scraps while watching them feast my sister with everything they had? But the betrayal cut even deeper when I discovered the real reason behind their favoritism. Cleaning out old files, I found a folder marked insurance papers. Inside were documents that made my blood turn to ice. 25 years ago, when I was 7 and Olivia was 10, we had been in a car accident. A drunk driver hit us while Dad was driving. I remembered bits and pieces: the hospital, the pain, missing months of school. What I did not remember, because no one ever told me, was that the insurance settlement had been substantial. $500,000. Split 3 ways. Dad received money for his injuries, and Olivia and I were supposed to receive equal amounts held in trust until we turned 18. Except I never saw a penny of that money. The documents showed that my parents had been granted legal control over both trust funds. Olivia's money had been carefully preserved and given to her at 18, just like it was supposed to be. My money gone, spent on family expenses and emergencies throughout my childhood and teenage years. I sat in their garage at 2 in the morning surrounded by boxes of evidence and finally understood the scope of their betrayal. They had stolen from me systematically for decades. Not just money. They had stolen my ability to start my adult life on equal footing with my sister. They had stolen my trust, my security, and my rightful place in the family. The most damaging discovery came last. Hidden behind old tax returns, I found a life insurance policy. My parents had taken out a policy on me when I turned 18. Something I vaguely remembered signing paperwork for, thinking it was just responsible planning. The beneficiary was not me, obviously. It was Olivia. They had literally bet on my death to benefit their favorite daughter. I photographed everything. Every receipt, every bank statement, every insurance document. By dawn, I had compiled a folder of evidence that painted a picture of financial abuse spanning decades. When Mom found me in the garage that morning, surrounded by their financial history, she did not look surprised. She looked tired. "Seraphina, you don't understand the whole situation," she said, her voice lacking its usual authority. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied, standing up slowly. "I understand that you stole my inheritance, my insurance settlement, and 25 years of honesty. I understand that you've been lying to me my entire adult life. We did what we thought was best for the family." "No, you did what was best for Olivia. There's a difference." That morning, I packed everything I had discovered into my car and drove home. I had enough evidence to bury them, but I needed a plan. Revenge served cold is always more satisfying than revenge served hot. I was done being the family doormat. It was time for them to learn what "family comes first" really meant when the family member they had discarded decided to fight back. The first phase of my revenge was simple documentation. I spent the next 6 weeks meticulously organizing every piece of evidence I had discovered. Bank statements, insurance documents, loan papers, receipts. Everything that proved the systematic financial abuse I had endured for decades. But I needed more than just papers. I needed witnesses, and I knew exactly where to find them. My first stop was Grandma Rose's attorney, Mr. Peterson. He was in his 70s now, but his memory was sharp. When I walked into his office with my folder of evidence, his face went pale. "Seraphina, I wondered if you would ever come asking about this," he said, settling heavily into his chair. "Your grandmother's will was very specific. The inheritance was to be split equally between you and Olivia. When your parents said they were handling the distribution, I assumed—" "You assumed they were honest," I finished. "I need you to write a letter confirming what the will actually said and what was supposed to happen." Within an hour, I had an official letter from the estate attorney confirming that my parents had violated the explicit terms of Grandma Rose's will by giving my half of the inheritance to Olivia. My next stop was the insurance company that had handled our childhood accident settlement. This proved trickier, as many of the original agents had retired. But insurance companies keep meticulous records, and I was legally entitled to information about my own trust fund. The claims adjuster who finally helped me was a woman named Patricia, who had been with the company for 30 years. When she pulled up the old files, her expression grew increasingly troubled. "Miss, I have to tell you, this is highly irregular," she said, printing out page after page of documents. "Your trust fund was liquidated incrementally over several years, but the withdrawals were all authorized by your legal guardians for educational and living expenses. However, based on the amounts and frequency, this appears to have been systematic depletion rather than legitimate educational costs." Can you provide documentation of exactly where this money went? I can provide documentation of every withdrawal, yes. But Miss... Patricia lowered her voice. If you suspect financial abuse, you should know that there are legal remedies available. The statute of limitations on trust fund misappropriation in cases of guardian fraud can be quite extensive. I left the insurance office with a 40-page document detailing exactly how my parents had stolen nearly $200,000 from my childhood accident settlement. Every withdrawal was itemized, and many of them coincided perfectly with major purchases for Olivia. Her first car, her college tuition, her wedding expenses. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I had always wondered how my parents managed to maintain their lifestyle while claiming to be tight on money whenever I needed help. The auto repair shop was successful, but not successful enough to fund Olivia's lavish lifestyle and still maintain their own comfortable standard of living. The answer came when I ran into Mrs. Rodriguez, their longtime bookkeeper at the grocery store. She had retired the previous year, but she remembered me from the rare occasions when I had visited the shop as a child. "Seraphina, how nice to see you. I always wondered why you never worked at the shop like your sister did." I stopped pushing my cart. "Olivia worked at the shop." Mrs. Rodriguez looked confused. "Well, yes, she's been on the payroll for, 15 years now. Your parents said she did administrative work from home, 40 hours a week at $25 an hour. I always thought it was generous considering..." My hands tightened on the cart handle. "Considering what?" "Well, considering I never saw any work product from her. No reports, no filing, nothing. But your parents insisted she was essential to operations." Phantom employee. My sister had been collecting $40,000 a year from the family business for 15 years, while doing absolutely nothing. $600,000 in fraudulent wages paid to ensure she never had to worry about money while I struggled through college and my early career. Mrs. Rodriguez seemed to realize she had revealed something significant. I probably should not have mentioned that, but I always felt bad about the unfairness. You were such a good kid, Seraphina. You deserved better. That evening, I called the family business's accountant. I had met him several times over the years at family gatherings, and he remembered me well. Under the guise of helping Dad organize his retirement planning, I managed to get access to 15 years of business records. The phantom payroll was just the beginning. Olivia had been listed as a business partner, entitling her to a share of profits. Marcus had been given a consulting contract despite having no relevant expertise. Even their children had been put on payroll as soon as they turned 14. Jobs that existed only on paper. My parents had turned their business into a money laundering operation designed to funnel cash to Olivia's family while avoiding gift taxes. Everything was legal on paper, but it was a systematic scheme to ensure that every dollar the business earned went to their favorite daughter's family. I now had evidence of inheritance theft, trust fund embezzlement, and business fraud totaling over $800,000. But I still needed the perfect moment to deploy it. That moment came at Olivia's birthday party in February. My parents had rented out the back room of an upscale restaurant for 50 guests. Olivia's friends, neighbors, extended family. Everyone who mattered to our social circle was there. The party cost easily $3,000, which I now knew came from phantom business profits. I arrived fashionably late, carrying a beautifully wrapped gift and wearing my best smile. Everyone was surprised to see me, as I had been notably absent from family gatherings since Thanksgiving. "Seraphina?" Mom rushed over, clearly nervous about my presence. "How wonderful that you could make it." "I wouldn't miss celebrating my sister," I replied sweetly. "After all, family comes first, right?" The party proceeded normally for the first hour. Dinner, drinks, the usual family stories. I waited until the cake was served and everyone was relaxed and happy. "I'd like to make a toast," I announced, standing up with my champagne glass. The room quieted. Dad looked uncomfortable, but Olivia beamed. She loved being the center of attention. I want to toast my sister Olivia. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the room. A woman who has achieved so much with the support of our family. Tonight, I think it's time everyone knew just how much support she's received over the years. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. For instance, did everyone know that Olivia received not just her half of our grandmother's inheritance, but mine as well? $50,000 that was supposed to be split equally. Murmurs rippled through the room. Olivia's face went white. Or that she's been receiving a salary from our family business for 15 years, despite never actually working there. $600,000 for imaginary administrative work. The murmurs grew louder. I could see family friends exchanging shocked glances. And let's not forget the $200,000 from my childhood accident settlement that was supposed to be held in trust for me, but somehow ended up paying for Olivia's lifestyle instead. Dad stood up abruptly. Seraphina, this is not the time or place for this discussion. Really? When is the appropriate time to discuss systematic theft, Dad? Because I've been waiting 32 years for someone to have that conversation with me. I opened the folder and began distributing photocopies to the tables. Everything is documented here. Bank records, insurance claims, business payroll records. $800,000 stolen from me over 25 years to ensure that Olivia never had to struggle like I did. The room was completely silent now except for the sound of people flipping through documents. Olivia finally found her voice. Seraphina, you're misunderstanding the situation. Mom and Dad were helping both of us. Show me, I interrupted. Show me one document, one receipt, one canceled check that proves they ever gave me anything close to what they gave you. She could not, because none existed. I turned to address the room. My parents told me that Olivia's family comes first, and I'm always last. Tonight, I want everyone here to see what that really meant. It meant stealing my inheritance. It meant embezzling my trust fund. It meant running a fraudulent business operation to funnel money to their favorite daughter while telling me that asking for help with student loans would build character. Uncle Robert, my dad's brother, stood up with the documents in his hand. His face was grim. Is this true, James? Did you really steal from your own daughter? Dad's shoulders sagged. It's more complicated than that. Olivia has children. She needed my money, I asked. She needed to steal my future to fund her present. The party dissolved into chaos. Half the guests left immediately. Extended family members surrounded my parents, demanding explanations. Olivia was crying, but whether from shame or anger, I could not tell. I stood in the middle of the restaurant watching 25 years of careful family mythology crumble around me. Everyone now knew the truth about the golden daughter and the scapegoat. Everyone could see the receipts literally. But as satisfying as public humiliation was, I knew this was just the beginning. Exposure was only the first step in getting justice. The real consequences were yet to come. The fallout from Olivia's birthday party was immediate and devastating, but not in the way I had expected. Instead of shame and apologies, my family chose to double down on their narrative. Within 24 hours, I received a furious phone call from Dad. "How dare you embarrass this family in public?" he shouted. "You've destroyed relationships that took decades to build. Your mother is having chest pains from the stress you've caused." I destroyed relationships. I laughed bitterly. I simply told the truth about relationships that were already destroyed. The difference is that now everyone else can see it too. "We're cutting you off completely," he declared. "You're no longer welcome at family events. Don't call us, don't visit us, and don't expect any inheritance when we're gone." "Dad," I said calmly, "you already stole my inheritance. Multiple times. You have nothing left to threaten me with." But their counterattack went beyond simple estrangement. Within the week, I discovered that they had launched a campaign to paint me as the villain in our family drama. Mom called every relative, every family friend, every neighbor spinning a story about how I was a bitter, jealous sister who could not handle my parents' love for Olivia's children. She claimed I had fabricated financial documents and was trying to destroy the family out of spite. The narrative was carefully crafted. I was the successful, childless daughter who resented my struggling sister and her beautiful family. I was selfish, greedy, and cruel. Poor Olivia was the victim of my jealousy, and my elderly parents were heartbroken by my vicious lies. It might have worked except for one crucial miscalculation. They forgot that truth leaves tracks. My first unexpected ally came from within their own circle. Mrs. Rodriguez, the retired bookkeeper, called me 3 days after the party. "Seraphina, I've been losing sleep since I saw you at the store," she said. "What I told you about Olivia's fake job, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I have 15 years worth of financial records that show exactly how your parents manipulated the business finances." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I have granddaughters your age," she said firmly. "What your parents did to you was wrong. I kept quiet because it wasn't my place, but after seeing how they're trying to make you look like the bad person, I can't stay silent anymore." Mrs. Rodriguez became my first major ally. She provided detailed records showing not just Olivia's phantom employment, but also a pattern of financial manipulation that went far beyond what I had discovered. Equipment purchases that never arrived, vendor payments that went to shell companies, business expenses that were actually personal purchases for Olivia's family. She also connected me with the business's former insurance agent, who had been puzzled for years about certain liability claims that seemed designed to generate payouts rather than cover actual losses. Another layer of fraud orchestrated to pump money out of the business and into Olivia's pocket. My second major ally emerged from an even more unexpected source: Marcus's ex-business partner. I had never met Jake Morrison, but Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned that he had tried to go into business with Marcus 5 years earlier. The venture had failed spectacularly, and Jake had lost his investment. She suggested I might want to talk to him. Jake met me at a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and his story made my blood boil. "Marcus came to me with this great idea for a restaurant," Jake explained. "He said he had backing from his family's business and that we just needed to pool our resources to get started. I put in $50,000 of my own money, plus I co-signed a business loan for another $100,000. What happened? The restaurant failed within 6 months. Marcus blamed the location, the economy, bad luck. But I found out later that he had been siphoning money from the business account from day one. The family backing he claimed to have, that was just money his in-laws had funneled through their auto shop. When the restaurant went under, Marcus walked away clean. I was stuck with the debt and a ruined credit score." Jake pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "I've been collecting evidence for years trying to build a case for fraud. But Marcus is slippery. Everything was technically legal because I had agreed to be his business partner. I could never prove criminal intent." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because your story at that party, it explains everything. Marcus doesn't fail at businesses. He's designed to fail at them. They're money laundering operations funded by your parents and designed to extract cash from investors like me. When they collapse, Marcus keeps the money and moves on to the next scheme." Jake's evidence revealed a pattern of predatory business practices spanning a decade. Marcus had burned through at least 6 business partners, each time walking away with their investments while claiming the failures were due to market conditions or bad luck. Every venture had been secretly funded by money stolen from me either directly or through the family business. But Jake brought more than just documentation. He brought connections. "I'm part of a support group for people who've been victims of business fraud," he said. "Would you be interested in meeting some others who might have useful perspectives on your situation?" That support group became the foundation of my alliance network. 12 people who had been systematically robbed by various schemes, all of whom understood the importance of thorough documentation and strategic action. Among them was Linda Peterson, a forensic accountant who specialized in family financial abuse cases. She reviewed my evidence and confirmed what I had suspected. I had enough documentation to pursue both civil and criminal charges. The trust fund embezzlement alone is a felony, she explained. Add in the business fraud and the systematic inheritance theft, and you're looking at potential prison time for your parents. The statute of limitations hasn't run out because the fraud was ongoing, and you only recently discovered the full scope. Linda also introduced me to David Kim, an attorney who specialized in financial elder abuse. Except in this case, the elder abuse was happening in reverse, with older adults systematically stealing from their adult child. David was fascinated by my case. I've seen parents steal from minor children, and I've seen adult children steal from elderly parents, he said. But systematic long-term theft by parents from their adult child using multiple schemes over decades, this is unusual enough to be precedent-setting. Through the support group, I also met Sarah Martinez, a private investigator who specialized in financial crimes. Sarah offered to do a deep dive into my family's finances, looking for patterns and evidence that I might have missed. Family fraud cases are particularly complex because the perpetrators have intimate knowledge of the victim's life and financial situation. Sarah explained. They know exactly how to manipulate you and how to hide their tracks. But they also tend to get sloppy over time because they assume family members won't fight back. Sarah's investigation uncovered the most damaging evidence, yet my parents had been systematically using my social security number and personal information to obtain credit in my name, which they then used to fund Olivia's lifestyle. They've been opening credit cards, taking out loans, and even filing false tax returns using your information for over 15 years, Sarah reported. The identity theft alone is enough to put them in federal prison. My alliance network had grown to include Mrs. Rodriguez with her insider business knowledge, Jake with his pattern evidence of Marcus's fraud schemes, Linda with her forensic accounting expertise, David with his legal firepower, and Sarah with her investigation skills. But the most powerful ally came from the most unexpected source, my own family. Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother, had been troubled by the revelations at Olivia's party. Unlike the rest of the extended family, he did not accept my parents' revised narrative about me being a jealous troublemaker. Robert had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who asked uncomfortable questions and refused to participate in the collective delusions that kept family peace. After the party, he started doing his own investigation. I remember when your grandmother died, he told me during a clandestine meeting at his house. Your dad was very secretive about handling her estate. He insisted on taking care of everything himself and got angry when I offered to help. Now I understand why. Robert had been keeping his own records of family finances for years, partly out of natural suspicion and partly because he had considered investing in Dad's business at various points. I have bank statements, tax records, and business documents going back 20 years, he said. I also have recordings. Recordings. Your dad likes to brag when he drinks. I've been recording family gatherings for years to preserve memories, but I never listened to most of them until now. Want to hear your parents discussing how to hide money from you? The recordings were devastating. Hours of audio from family barbecues, holiday dinners, and casual conversations where my parents explicitly discussed their strategies for keeping me financially dependent while ensuring Olivia never faced any consequences for her poor decisions. In one particularly damaging conversation from 3 years earlier, I could hear Dad telling Uncle Robert, "The beauty of the trust fund situation is that Seraphina doesn't even know it existed. We can use that money forever, and she'll never think to ask about it. She trusts us completely." Mom's voice was clear in the background. It's for the greater good. Olivia's children need security more than Seraphina needs money she doesn't even know she's missing. Another recording captured them discussing the phantom payroll scheme. It's genius, really. We pay Olivia through the business so it looks like legitimate employment rather than gifts. No tax implications, and Seraphina never sees the business books anyway. By March, my alliance network had compiled enough evidence to bury my parents and Marcus in both civil and criminal court. We had documentation of trust fund embezzlement, inheritance theft, business fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. But I had also learned an important lesson about family dynamics. Exposure alone was not enough. My parents had spent decades building a narrative about family loyalty and financial responsibility that allowed them to justify their crimes. Simply revealing their theft had not changed that narrative. It had only forced them to defend it more aggressively. The real battle was not just about money. It was about power control and the fundamental question of who got to define truth in our family. My parents had controlled that narrative for 32 years, and they were not going to give it up without a fight. As I prepared for the next phase of my campaign, I realized that the most dangerous part was yet to come. Because when cornered animals fight back, they often bite the hand that feeds them. And sometimes they bite their own. The betrayal came from the person I trusted most in my alliance network, Uncle Robert. It happened in April, just as we were preparing to file both civil and criminal charges. David Kim had finished preparing our legal strategy. Sarah Martinez had compiled the final evidence package, and Linda Peterson had completed her forensic accounting analysis. We were ready to move forward with what would be the most comprehensive family financial fraud case in our state's history. Then Uncle Robert called an emergency meeting. "We need to talk before this goes any further," he said, his voice strained over the phone. "There are things you don't know, Seraphina. Complications that could hurt everyone." We met at his house on a Thursday evening. The moment I walked in, I knew something was wrong. Robert looked haggard, exhausted in a way that went beyond simple stress. "I've been thinking about this case constantly," he began. "And I realized there's a problem. A big one." "What kind of problem?" He pulled out a folder, one I had never seen before. "Remember how I told you I had been considering investing in your dad's business over the years?" "Yes." "Well, I did more than consider it. 5 years ago, when the business was struggling, I loaned your dad $50,000 to keep it afloat." My stomach dropped. "Okay, that doesn't change anything about what they stole from me." "Seraphina, the loan was never repaid. And according to the business records we've been using as evidence, the money I loaned was specifically used to fund Olivia's phantom salary and benefits." I stared at him, the implications hitting me like a physical blow. "You're saying you helped fund the theft of my money?" "Not intentionally," he said quickly. "I thought I was helping save the family business. I had no idea about the systematic fraud. But legally, I'm complicit in a scheme that defrauded you of tens of thousands of dollars." "Why are you telling me this now?" Robert's face crumpled. "Because your parents found out that I've been helping you. They threatened to expose my involvement if I don't convince you to drop the charges. They have documentation showing that I knew about some of Olivia's employment arrangements and chose not to question them." The room spun around me. My most trusted ally, the person who had provided the most damaging evidence against my parents, was actually complicit in their crimes. "How much did you know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I knew Olivia was getting paid by the business for work I never saw evidence of. I suspected it was nepotism, but I told myself it was just family helping family. I never imagined the scope of what was really happening. "But you kept quiet about it for years." "Yes. And now they're saying that if this goes to court, they'll claim I was a co-conspirator who turned against them when I got caught. They have emails between us discussing business finances. They have records of my loan. They can make it look like I was part of the scheme from the beginning." Robert pulled out another document. "They've also threatened to sue me for the $50,000 I loaned them, plus interest and penalties. They're claiming that since the loan was used for fraudulent purposes, I'm liable for damages to the business and to Olivia's family." I felt the carefully constructed foundation of my case crumbling beneath me. Robert had been my secret weapon, the inside source with decades of documentation and recordings that proved my parents' deliberate intent to defraud me. Without his testimony and evidence, my case became much weaker. But the betrayal went even deeper. "There's more," Robert said, unable to meet my eyes. "They know about your support group. They know about the other people you've been working with." "How could they possibly know that?" "Because I told them." The words hit me like a physical slap. You told them. They confronted me 2 weeks ago with evidence of my involvement in the business loans. They said they would destroy me financially and legally unless I cooperated with them. They wanted to know everything about your investigation, who you were working with, what evidence you had compiled, what your legal strategy was. And you gave them everything. I gave them enough to protect myself, he said miserably. I'm 67 years old, Seraphina. I can't afford to lose my house and my retirement savings in a legal battle. I can't risk criminal charges at my age. The scope of his betrayal was breathtaking. He had given my parents detailed information about every member of my alliance network. He had warned them about Sarah Martinez's investigation, Linda Peterson's forensic analysis, and David Kim's legal strategy. Worst of all, he had provided them with copies of his own recordings, the ones where they discussed their systematic fraud. But now, instead of being evidence against them, the recordings would be presented as evidence that Robert was a willing participant in their schemes, who only turned against them when he got caught. They're going to discredit everyone, I realized aloud. They know about Mrs. Rodriguez, so they'll claim she's a disgruntled former employee making false accusations. They know about Jake Morrison, so they'll paint him as a bitter business partner trying to blame others for his own failures. They know about my support group, so they'll argue that I'm part of some kind of anti-family conspiracy. I'm sorry, Robert whispered. I'm so sorry. But they have me trapped. If I testify against them, they'll destroy me. If I stay silent, maybe we can all find a way to move forward. Move forward. I stood up, rage flooding through me. You want me to move forward and pretend that my parents didn't steal $800,000 from me over 25 years. Maybe there's a way to work out some kind of settlement. Your parents are getting older. When they die, you could inherit the business and the business that's mortgaged to the hilt to fund Olivia's lifestyle. The business that exists primarily as a money laundering operation. You want me to wait for my thieves to die and then inherit their debt? Robert flinched. I know how it sounds, but it sounds like you've chosen your side, I said coldly. And it's not mine. As I drove home that night, I felt more alone than I had since this entire nightmare began. My parents had successfully turned my most valuable ally against me, and in doing so, they had contaminated much of my evidence. Worse, I realized that they had been playing chess while I was playing checkers. They had anticipated my investigation, prepared counter-narratives, and systematically neutralized my advantages. They had decades of experience manipulating family dynamics and controlling narratives. I had been naive to think that simply exposing their crimes would be enough to defeat them. But as devastating as Robert's betrayal was, it also clarified something important for me. This was not just about money anymore. This was about power control and the fundamental question of whether truth mattered more than family loyalty. My parents believed they could steal from me with impunity because they thought family ties would ultimately protect them from consequences. They thought that even if I discovered their crimes, I would never have the strength to truly fight back against the people who raised me. Robert's betrayal proved they were wrong about family loyalty protecting them. If my own uncle could turn against me to save himself, then family meant nothing. All that mattered was justice. As I sat in my apartment that night, surrounded by boxes of evidence that might now be worthless, I realized I had to make a choice. I could accept defeat, take whatever settlement my parents might offer, and spend the rest of my life knowing that they had beaten me. Or I could find another way to fight. A way that didn't depend on family allies who could be turned against me. A way that relied on institutions and systems that were stronger than family manipulation. I had been fighting this battle on my parents' terms using family connections and personal relationships. But some battles can only be won by changing the rules entirely. The next morning, I made a decision that would transform everything. Instead of trying to repair my compromised alliance network, I would build a new one. But this time, I would rely on people who had no family ties to manipulate, no emotional connections to exploit. This time, I would rely on the law itself. The morning after Robert's betrayal, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and staring at 3 business cards: David Kim, attorney; Linda Peterson, forensic accountant; and Sarah Martinez, private investigator. These were the professionals in my alliance network, people who were paid to help me, not bound by family loyalty. My first call was to David Kim. "I need to know something," I said without preamble. "How much does Robert's betrayal actually damage our case?" David was quiet for a moment. "It complicates things. His testimony would have been powerful, and losing access to his recordings hurts. But Seraphina, your case doesn't depend on family testimony. You have documentary evidence, financial records, and a paper trail that spans decades. Family members can change their stories, but bank records don't lie. My parents will try to discredit every witness and claim that everyone helping me has ulterior motives. Let them try. That's what defense attorneys always do: attack the credibility of witnesses. But we're not building a case based primarily on witness testimony. We're building a case based on objective financial evidence that can be independently verified." David's confidence reminded me of something I had forgotten in the chaos of family drama. The law operates on evidence, not emotions. My parents could manipulate family narratives, but they could not manipulate bank statements, insurance records, and business documents. My second call was to Sarah Martinez. "I need you to dig deeper," I told her. "Robert's betrayal means my parents know about our investigation, so they've had time to prepare defenses. But it also means they might have made mistakes trying to cover their tracks." "That's actually good news," Sarah replied. "When people try to hide evidence, they often create new evidence in the process. Let me run a fresh investigation focusing on recent activity." Sarah's new investigation uncovered exactly what we had hoped for. In the weeks since Robert's betrayal, my parents had been frantically trying to legitimate their fraudulent activities retroactively. They had created fake invoices and work orders trying to justify Olivia's phantom employment. They had backdated contracts and agreements attempting to make their business fraud appear legal. Most damaging of all, they had transferred assets and moved money around in ways that actually made their crimes more obvious, not less. "It's like watching someone try to hide a dead body by digging more graves," Sarah reported. "Every attempt to cover up the original crime creates new evidence of criminal intent." But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Linda Peterson had mentioned our case to a colleague during a forensic accounting conference. That colleague happened to be Jennifer Walsh, a federal investigator with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network who specialized in family-based money laundering operations. Jennifer called me personally. "Ms. Blackwood," she said, "I understand you've uncovered what appears to be a decades-long pattern of financial fraud involving identity theft and business-based money laundering. Would you be interested in speaking with federal investigators?" I nearly dropped the phone. Federal investigators. Your case has several elements that fall under federal jurisdiction. The systematic identity theft, the business fraud involving interstate commerce, and the potential tax evasion all trigger federal interest. We've been looking for a case like yours to establish precedents for prosecuting long-term family financial abuse. Jennifer explained that family financial crime was an emerging area of federal law enforcement. Traditional prosecutions focused on stranger-based fraud or elder abuse, but systematic theft by parents from adult children had received little attention despite being surprisingly common. Most victims never fight back because family loyalty prevents them from pursuing prosecution, Jennifer said. But when they do fight back, the evidence is often extensive because family members tend to be sloppy about hiding crimes from people they consider safe to steal from. Within a week, I found myself sitting in a federal building reviewing my case with a team of investigators who specialized in complex financial crimes. They were fascinated by the scope and duration of my parents' fraud schemes. 25 years of systematic theft using multiple methods, said Agent Martinez, the lead investigator. This is like a textbook case of how family-based financial abuse escalates over time. The federal investigators brought resources that my private alliance network could never match. They could subpoena records that I had no access to. They could analyze financial patterns using sophisticated software. They could coordinate with state and local authorities to ensure that all aspects of the crimes were properly prosecuted. Most importantly, they were completely immune to family manipulation. My parents could not threaten them, bribe them, or guilt them into backing down. Agent Martinez assigned a team of 5 investigators to analyze different aspects of the case. One focused on the trust fund embezzlement. Another examined the business fraud schemes. A third analyzed the identity theft patterns. A fourth investigated the tax implications. The fifth looked into possible accomplices beyond my immediate family. Within 2 weeks, they had uncovered evidence that made my private investigation look amateur by comparison. The identity theft was far more extensive than we had realized. My parents had been using my social security number and personal information to obtain credit cards, car loans, and even a mortgage that I knew nothing about. The total fraudulent debt in my name exceeded $300,000. The business fraud involved not just phantom employment for Olivia, but also fake vendor contracts, inflated expense reports, and systematic tax evasion. The total amount of business fraud exceeded $400,000. Most shocking of all, they discovered that my parents had been running similar schemes against other family members. Uncle Robert was not just a victim of blackmail, he was also a victim of identity theft. His social security number had been used to obtain business loans that he never authorized. Even more disturbing, they found evidence that my parents had attempted to fraudulently claim life insurance benefits by reporting me as deceased in 2018. The claim had been rejected because I was obviously alive and working, but the attempt created a federal paper trail of insurance fraud. "Your parents are not just thieves," Agent Martinez explained during one of our meetings. "They're sophisticated criminals who have been running multiple fraud schemes simultaneously for decades. This goes far beyond family financial abuse into the realm of organized crime." But the federal investigation also uncovered something that gave me personal satisfaction beyond the criminal charges, evidence of how my parents' crimes were destroying them financially and emotionally. Their frantic attempts to cover up their fraud had cost them enormous amounts of money in legal fees, accounting costs, and failed schemes. They had taken out multiple loans against their house and business to fund the cover-up operations. They were now deeply in debt and facing foreclosure. More importantly, their relationship with Olivia had deteriorated dramatically once she realized the scope of what they had done on her behalf. The federal investigators had interviewed her as a potential accomplice, and she had hired her own attorney after learning that she could be charged as a co-conspirator in the business fraud schemes. Olivia claims she had no knowledge of the source of the money she received. Agent Martinez reported. She says she believed her parents were simply generous and successful. Whether that's true or not, she's definitely distancing herself from them now that federal charges are pending. The Golden Daughter was abandoning ship, leaving my parents to face the consequences of their crimes alone. But the most satisfying discovery came from financial records showing that my parents had been stealing from Peter to pay Paul for years. The money they stole from me had been used to fund Olivia's lifestyle, but the money to fund their own lifestyle had been stolen from other sources, including Uncle Robert, the business, and various fraud schemes. They were not successful criminals who had gotten rich from their schemes. They were desperate criminals who had been robbing everyone around them just to maintain the illusion of financial stability. The irony, Jennifer Walsh explained, is that if they had simply given you your rightful inheritance and treated you fairly, they would be in a much better financial position today. The cost of maintaining their fraud schemes has exceeded the amount they originally stole from you. By late spring, the federal case was ready to move forward. Grand jury indictments were being prepared for my parents Marcus and potentially Olivia, if evidence emerged that she had been a knowing participant rather than just a beneficiary. But more than that, I had gained something I had never expected: a chosen family of professionals who believed in justice rather than blind loyalty. Jennifer Walsh had become more than an investigator. She was a mentor who taught me about the legal system and helped me understand my rights as a crime victim. Agent Martinez treated me like a colleague, respecting my intelligence and my own investigative work. David Kim had evolved from hired attorney to trusted advisor, who helped me think through the long-term implications of various legal strategies. Even Mrs. Rodriguez had remained loyal, despite the pressure from my parents. When they tried to discredit her as a disgruntled employee, she provided additional documentation that helped federal investigators understand the full scope of the business fraud. As we prepared for the final phase, the actual prosecution and justice, I realized that I had lost my family of origin, but gained something more valuable, a family of choice based on shared values of honesty, integrity, and justice. The scared, isolated woman who had discovered her parents' betrayal 8 months earlier was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and absolutely determined to see justice served. My parents had taught me that family comes first, and I am always last. But they had been wrong about what family really means. Real family does not steal from you, lie to you, or betray you. Real family stands with you when you fight for what is right, even when it is difficult. I was about to show them what real family loyalty looked like, and it looked like justice. The federal grand jury handed down indictments on a crisp October morning, exactly 11 months after that devastating Thanksgiving dinner when I first learned about my stolen inheritance. My parents were charged with conspiracy to commit mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, and money laundering. Marcus faced charges for his role in the business fraud schemes. Even Olivia was indicted as a co-conspirator despite her claims of ignorance about the source of her family's wealth. I was not required to attend the arraignment, but I chose to be there. I sat in the back of the federal courthouse watching my parents shuffle in wearing handcuffs, looking older and more fragile than I had ever seen them. Mom caught sight of me in the gallery. For a moment, our eyes met across the courtroom. I expected to feel triumph, vindication, or even satisfaction. Instead, I felt something I had not anticipated: pity. They looked like what they had always been. Small, scared people who had chosen to steal rather than build, to lie, rather than grow, to manipulate rather than love. The powerful figures who had dominated my childhood and controlled my adult life were revealed as petty criminals facing the consequences of their choices. The legal proceedings moved quickly after that. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of decades in federal prison, my parents accepted a plea agreement. Dad was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Mom received 4 years. Marcus got 3 years. Olivia, who cooperated with prosecutors and demonstrated genuine remorse, received 2 years of probation and was ordered to pay restitution. But the financial justice was even more satisfying than the criminal sentences. The federal asset forfeiture process recovered nearly everything that had been stolen from me. The business was sold to pay restitution. My parents' house was liquidated. Bank accounts, investment accounts, even Olivia's house. Everything was seized to compensate me for 25 years of systematic theft. The final accounting showed that I had been defrauded of just over $1.2 million when interest and investment growth were factored in. After legal fees and court costs, I recovered almost $900,000. But more than the money I had gained, something invaluable: the knowledge that justice was possible even against family members who seemed untouchable. The broader family consequences were equally dramatic. Uncle Robert, faced with evidence of his own victimization through identity theft, filed his own criminal complaint and civil lawsuit. Other relatives began examining their own financial histories, discovering smaller instances of theft and manipulation that painted a picture of my parents as serial family predators. The extended family network that had initially rallied around my parents' narrative of me as the jealous sister crumbled as evidence mounted. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone who had initially blamed me for destroying family unity, came forward with apologies and their own stories of financial manipulation. Christmas that year was completely different from any I had experienced. Instead of gathering at my parents' house for the usual performance of family harmony, I hosted dinner for my chosen family, Jennifer Walsh, and her wife, Agent Martinez, and his family, David Kim, Sarah Martinez, Mrs. Rodriguez, and her grandchildren, and even Jake Morrison, who had become a close friend through our shared experience of fighting financial fraud. We called it Survivor Christmas, a celebration for people who had fought back against those who tried to destroy them and won. But the most meaningful moment came in January, when I received a letter from a woman named Catherine in Oregon. She had read about my case in a news article about family financial fraud, and my story had given her the courage to investigate her own suspicions about her brother's handling of their mother's estate. "Your courage to fight your own family inspired me to ask the hard questions I had been avoiding," she wrote. "I discovered that my brother had been systematically stealing from our mother's accounts for 5 years. Because of your example, I knew that family loyalty did not mean accepting criminal behavior. I filed charges and justice was served." Catherine's letter was followed by dozens of others. My case had been covered by national media as an example of emerging family financial fraud, and the coverage had inspired other victims to come forward with their own stories. I realized that my personal fight for justice had become something larger, a catalyst for other people to recognize and resist family financial abuse. The isolation and shame that had kept me silent for so long were the same tools used to silence other victims. By spring, I had started a nonprofit organization called Family Justice Network to help other victims of family financial crime. Jennifer Walsh joined the board of directors. Agent Martinez helped develop training materials for law enforcement. David Kim provided legal resources. Sarah Martinez offered discounted investigative services. We created a support system for people fighting the same battles I had fought, but they would not have to fight alone like I did. The organization's first major success came when we helped a young man in Texas recover $200,000 stolen by his stepfather through identity theft and investment fraud. Our second case involved twin sisters in Florida, whose parents had been running a foster care fraud scheme. Our third case helped an elderly woman whose adult children had been systematically draining her retirement accounts. Each victory reinforced the same lesson: family members who commit crimes against other family members are not protected by love or loyalty. They are criminals who happen to share DNA, and they deserve to face the same consequences as any other criminal. As I write this 2 years after that devastating Thanksgiving revelation, I am living a life I never could have imagined when I was the family scapegoat begging for scraps of attention and fairness. I have financial security for the first time in my adult life. I own my own home, purchased with restitution money that was rightfully mine all along. I have started my own consulting business helping other people recover from financial fraud. More importantly, I have a family that chose me just as I chose them. Jennifer, Agent Martinez. David, Sarah, Mrs. Rodriguez. These are the people who stood with me when standing was difficult. They are the people I call when I have good news to share, or when I need support during difficult times. I learned that blood does not make a family. Loyalty, honesty, and mutual respect make a family. I learned that asking for justice is not the same as being vindictive. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable for their actions. Most importantly, I learned that I was never, always last. I was simply in the wrong family. In my chosen family, everyone comes first because we lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. My parents taught me that family means accepting abuse because blood is thicker than water. But they were wrong about the full saying. The original quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we are born with. Today, when people ask me about forgiveness and whether I regret destroying my family, I tell them the truth. I did not destroy my family. I revealed that it was already destroyed by lies, theft, and systematic abuse. All I did was refuse to pretend otherwise. Justice is not revenge. Justice is accountability. Justice is ensuring that actions have consequences. Justice is protecting future victims by showing that family status does not grant immunity from the law. My parents are in prison not because I am vindictive, but because they committed serious crimes for decades and refused every opportunity to make things right. They chose their fate through their actions, not their punishments. But here is what I want you to take away from my story. If you are being systematically mistreated by family members, you are not obligated to accept that treatment in the name of family loyalty. You deserve honesty, respect, and fairness from the people who claim to love you. Family members who truly love you will not steal from you, lie to you, or manipulate you. People who do those things are not family. They are abusers who happen to be related to you. You have the right to demand justice even from family members. You have the right to build a chosen family based on mutual respect rather than genetic accident. You have the right to put yourself first when the people who should protect you are actually harming you. Have you experienced financial abuse from family members? Have you been the scapegoat in a family that favored others at your expense? How did this story of family karma and justice make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to find the courage to fight back. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family trauma and finding justice. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people who claim to love them. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Remember that justice delayed is not always justice denied. Sometimes it is justice perfectly timed. I hope my story helps you believe that standing up for yourself is always worth it, even when the people you are standing up to are family. Your chosen family is out there waiting for you. Sometimes you have to fight for the life you deserve, but that life is always worth fighting for.